From the noteworthy to the controversial, I'm Stevie Morrison, and I'm here to guide you through my thoughts and opinions of what I saw at the Germany Sail Grand Prix in Sassnitz. It's time for an inside look.
This is the Germany Sail Grand Prix Sassnitz.
Oh, the French have really put it in the water there. Oh my word.
The Emirates winning moment goes the way of the home team.
Unbelievable.
Give the win in Sassnitz to the French.
Allez, les Bleus, yay!
Lots to get into from the weekend, but let's start with my spotlight. And I think this weekend it's just got to really be the high speeds, hasn't it? Rotterdam, Denmark broke the SailGP racing record, 103.93 kilometres an hour. Boat shaking as it went round mark number one there. Sehested saying he was really pushing. He knew that record was close. But if you looked on Instagram, you'd have seen that Switzerland, New Zealand, just teams the whole way through the fleet were breaking their own speed records. All of them pushing up to 3 digits, the 100 kilometres an hour. The action was fast paced. There was lots of overtaking, but it was all happening in these incredibly high speeds. So quite exciting action, to be fair.
Oh, France! Oh, the French have really put it in the water there.
Well, with the good comes the bad. And so my low light for the weekend really, well, it involves some sort of high-speed incidents we saw on practice day. We ended up with the wrong rudders fitted. So we were expecting less winds. We ended up with the light wind rudders, bigger elevators, which obviously will give you more lift. But once they start going really, really fast, they almost end up, breaking themselves apart because of the drag on them and the amount of lift they're giving off. So the French at Mark 1, Contan absolute hammer down, as is his want, really, I guess. Contan's not one to step back from the gas. Overloaded the rudder. You see the boat twitch and get towards the edge of control there. So could he have known to back off a little bit? Maybe. Is that in his DNA? Well, I think we all know that's not something that's in his DNA. But yeah, maybe a slight mistake there with the wrong equipment and not managing that correctly at Mark 1. And then at the same time, Brazil, they were a little bit high on angle, dropped the board perhaps earlier than they should have done. I think, they weren't really down to a downwind angle. And as the board went in, you could see the balance of the boat all went off and it got sucked down into the water really hard, at which point all that load came on. So that, maybe slightly small mistake when the board dropped and hit the water, at that really high angle and quite high speed. The boat overloaded and we saw it had fairly catastrophic effects. So, pretty big moment, to be fair, and just really relieved that in both those incidents, other than some bumps and bruises, no one was really badly hurt. I mean, at the end of the day, I think with these high-speed incidents, if you're at this top-level sport, you're racing on the edge and pushing things to the limit, things can happen like this. So, it's very unfortunate. It was obviously very full-on. But yeah, if you're going to push the limit, sometimes you're going to push a bit too hard.
5, down 10. Oh.
Now, the moment of the weekend that could have been season-defining for Emirates GBR on day one in race 3, leg 3, it was a huge crash. And watching it live, obviously, it was pretty shocking just to see the whole front of a boat come off, and then the huge damage that there was to Emirates Great Britain as well. I haven't had the time to look back. I've been at the privileged position of getting onto the onboard cameras, and I think what's noticeable, you got a new strategist on board there, Andrew Campbell, working with Taylor Canfield and the crew. And you hear them early on after the manoeuvre saying, yeah, we've got 2 boats down there. One of them, of course, we now know was Emirates Great Britain. They're both on port tack. Well, already at that point, they weren't. And an interesting feature of SailGP for me is all the teams, coaches have got UmpApp. They've got onboard cameras. They can see everything going on. So I feel like teams maybe are going to start to need to lean into the coaches, where coaches can clarify things of, if they hear something that's quite clearly wrong, they can jump in and say something. Again, I don't know the exact dynamic at it, but there was no obvious comeback there from the coach saying, no, actually, Great Britain are on starboard. So where United States team think the 2 boats are sailing parallel, therefore they're not getting closer together, Great Britain was actually already on a direct collision course. And it was about 5, 6, 7 seconds later. Well, these things are traveling at 20 meters a second. So that's nearly 100 meters gone in that little blink of an eye before they go and look. We see Andrew Campbell, he goes down to look, but by the time he goes to look, it's already really close. Their comms are down 5, but it, to me, screams a little bit of a new combination, trying to find the language and the wording with each other there. And ultimately, it needs to be, we're going to crash, bail, or whatever it has to be. If you already missed the fact that you're on that course, which they had, then it needed to be more dramatic than down 5, or down 10, or whatever it is. It's like, we've got to get out of here, crash, tack, whatever it is, to just get the boats away from each other. Well, now that's just my opinion. So let's get into the facts. I'm lucky enough to be able to bring in the Chief Umpire Craig Mitchell, and he's going to be able to walk us through what actually occurred here. Craig, yeah, so that incident with the USA and Great Britain, it was obviously dramatic. It was catastrophic in so many ways. It was kind of fairly inexcusable. How black and white was that incident in the booth? Is it as simple as we saw?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we can sort of see the boats lining up together. We've got advantage lines, so we know that they're on the same ladder line, and we can see it all lining up. And we have ghost boats which sit about 3 seconds out, so you can see that something pretty big is going to happen. And then it played out as it played out. So it was a pretty clear and easy penalty for us. And
I mean, what sort of closing speeds are we talking about? Have you actually kind of got an idea of how fast they were coming together?
I mean, they're kind of coming in sort of 50 to 60 kilometers an hour. The angle they're running is kind of somewhere between 45 and 55 true wind angle. So it's a full. It's a full T-bone essentially.
What obligation was there on Great Britain? I suppose, without wanting to be too controversial, but there was an incident in Sydney where Brazil and Germany had a seemingly not massively dissimilar two boats coming together, port and starboard. There wasn't a catastrophic collision in the end, but it kind of ended up with Brazil getting some penalty points as well as Germany in that incident. And obviously here, USA have got penalty points, which maybe you can sort of talk us through how you go about that area.
We've got two rules involved. One, which is the Rule 10 port starboard, which says that port tack boat's got to keep clear of the starboard tack boat. So you have that incident and you give the penalty according to who broke which rule there. And then you move on to, well, actually, you've now had contact. So then you look at it and go, well, who could have avoided that contact? And in this case, we looked at it, USA could definitely have avoided contact. And that's usually the way it goes. If someone penalizes an incident, and it's often any contact would go against the boat that broke the rule. So they broke Rule 10. And so they're definitely on the hook. And then we look at the other boat and say, could they have avoided? And then within Rule 14, it essentially says when it's clear that the other boat is not keeping clear, then what could they have done? And you can hear it from the onboard audio. They're looking, thinking, well, they're going to do something, they're going to do something. And at the point, it's very, very obvious. Then they turn up, they turn up kind of 10, 12 degrees to try and mitigate. But at that point, it's too late. You could start going, well, you should have tried sooner. You could have done this, you could have done that. But essentially, it's quite difficult with the right-of-way boat because, they've got to expect that the give-way boat's going to give way. Because if they start altering their course much, then they could confuse the issue. And then the give-way boat is going, well, which way do I go? Because now they're turning. So you end up in this, could be quite a tricky situation where neither boat knows what the other one's going to do. So that the starboard boat is looking at the situation, and eventually they'll go, this is going to go wrong, and so we need to do something. And at that point they do.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, sounds logical. I mean, I suppose for the USA you'd have expected a fairly easy dip, or they could have tacked. I guess they had plenty of options, and it just didn't seem. It seemed basically like they didn't see them. Is that how you sort of felt it was in the booth?
Yeah. It seems so. You kind of look at the UMPAP, and that gives you quite a good helicopter view, from top down, and you see they're essentially going in bow to bow. So you're actually expecting something to happen quite a bit earlier, but nothing seems to happen. And whether they're going to go for a tack or whether they're going to go for a dip, you would have thought a dip would have been a little bit sooner. But it's that dawning realization from GBR when they go, whoa, they're not actually doing anything.
Yeah.
And then at that point you say, well, what can they do? Are they passengers in this scenario? What's the best thing that they could do?
And then how do you, do you sort of dip your hand into a magic box to choose how many penalty points are going to be tipped out? How do we decide?
It's a little bit more structured than that. So we have a contact and damage policy, which we then it's a flow chart which we then go through. So we have 3 different levels of damage. We have contact, we have damage, and we have serious damage, and we've got a definition of each of those. And so we go to the tech team and say which box does it go into, and then when they've said, well, it's serious damage, and we get that confirmation. It's not up to us to assume what that level is. So we know that there's going to be some penalty points, but it's just the level. So we follow our spreadsheet, our flowchart down, and it gets to 12 points for serious damage, which then has a knock-on effect, which again gives them some season points. Season points were brought in back in season 3, because if you get a lot of contact and damage points during an event, then you probably think, well, my event's over, so I might take more risks to try and get to regain those points. And so you really want to make sure that that the teams are aware that they'll get season points as well, so that then they don't go over the top with taking more risks during an event where they've had points already.
Craig, I certainly feel like that incident was very much in the black and white part of your world. I'm sure as we carry on and get to have a few more of these catch-ups through the year, we'll start to venture further into the grey, where I know we were deep in the grey in Portsmouth.
Yeah, I think we're up to our necks in the grey in Portsmouth, and certainly out the back of that event, there's been more discussion with the teams about, this is the situation. We explained the rules situation, but also discussed where we want to get to as well, and see how we can get there. Because we want to make sure that we're penalising the right boat under the rules, but also, and if we have to change the rules to encompass other boats into those penalties, then we have to do that as well.
I guess the old saying that Robin's racing is not really the case. That here you've got to be that little bit more careful and keep themselves apart. I guess safety as much as anything else.
Yeah, definitely safety is number one concern, but at the same time, also you want to basically have the tech team and the shore teams maintaining the boats, not fixing the boats. And as soon as they have to go and fix a boat due to contact or other breakdowns, then they're being taken away from their usual tasks. And so really, we're trying to put that deterrent in there, and that deterrent has grown over the years. We've increased the number of points, and now it's really harsh. You get any contact and damage points, then probably your event is limited, and then your season is affected. So we're really saying don't stay away from each other. It's not a contact sport. Trust in the umpires to give the penalties without having to get in there and give someone a tap.
It was pretty realistic that GBR wouldn't have been able to sail. I mean, they literally did get put in the water, sail to the start and race. It was miraculous that everything worked out. And as we said, the tech team have had all the praise they deserve because it was amazing. But had they not raced, what would have happened? My understanding is that they would then get no points.
Redress is always a bit of a mess, and generally what happens is that it gets messy and no one ends up being happy, because the one that is entitled to the redress doesn't think it's enough, and the other competitors think it's too much, and so you generally have a lot of unhappiness which comes from redress. And it's also difficult to say, well, who deserves redress, who doesn't deserve redress, and so it was decided to keep it very simple, and say, well, there is no redress, which is really harsh. But across the year, maybe it all evens out. We do have a couple of places where we can score a boat. If the race committee decide to withdraw someone because their track is not working or their telemetry is not working, then we can score them in a race. What we do say is that if you have an accident or equipment breakdown in this event and the organising authority can't supply you with new equipment or replacement equipment for the next event, then we can score you in that next event. But yeah, this event, if GBR hadn't gone sailing, then they just score 0 points, which is super harsh. But that's one where if Max Verstappen bundles Lando Norris off the course, off the track, which has happened, but neither neither guy finishes. There's no redress for that. You penalise the guy that caused the accident, and then you move along. So we gave the penalty to USA. They got disqualified from that race, and then you move on.
One thing, just to call you up on there, you said, if Max Verstappen took Lando Norris off at the corner, neither of them would get points. But there's a very realistic chance that Max Verstappen, were he deemed to have been wrong, would get penalty points on a license. Do we have a license in SailGP?
We don't have a system of points at the moment. We do have a system where we can bring them into a hearing, and we can give them more penalty points or other actions, because of reckless behaviour. But we're actually looking now at having an F50 license, where you would have to, go through a certain number of hours. You have to pass certain tests, and basically show that you're capable of sailing on an F50. But also then we're looking at instigating a point system, so that if there are any incidents, then potentially we could be taking points off someone's license, and then they would be be ineligible to compete at a future event if they racked up too many points. So that's all in ideas list going forwards.
Okay, perfect. More work for Craig.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I just wanted to mention that we're really close to 1 million subscribers. So if you want to see more content like this, then please subscribe to the SailGP YouTube channel. We're going to be doing more in-depth sailing and SailGP discussions in the future, and you won't want to miss it. Some of the teams that, they're hitting the line regularly over 80 kilometers an hour. So that works out as they're traveling roughly 18, 19, 20 meters per second.
Yeah.
How on earth do they, how do you know they're over, and how do they manage to be quite that accurate? Because that's mind-blowing to me. If you think 20 meters a second, that is, you are moving.
Yes.
Through an invisible line. They don't see a line on the water like we see on the telly, do they?
No, they don't. And so they have some tools on board on their windscreen, which looks like a wave, and it's sort of black and white, and you surf the wave, and if you're ahead of the wave, you've got to kill time, and if you're behind the wave, you're late, and that will then help them to get to the line on time. It's still, the team have still got to have the skills to be able to do that, but it's certainly one of the tools in their arsenal. But because we're using military grade GPS units, which are accurate to 2.5 centimeters, and also are running at 20 hertz, we're also then pretty comfortable with the accuracy of knowing exactly where the boat is at any given time. So the computer basically says you're over or you're not, and that's that's the truth, and then we just rely on that. You might have a situation, and we have had it in the past, where the last known position of the marks, because the marks are moving as well, the last known position of the marks was in X, but when we put all the data together, it was in position Y, which might be a few centimeters differently because of when you've asked for that, when you've been given that information. So we have had a situation where a boat was called over, but it wasn't technically over, but it was at the last known time of knowing exactly where the line was. So you start to get into some pretty tricky maths, but it's all about us getting the data and lining all that data up in time and knowing where everybody is.
Yeah, well, we could see in the situation here with Tom, we hear them counting down, and Chris is kind of saying, it sounds like 2 seconds, 1 second. I presume that in that moment they're talking about how early they are for the line. But tactically, if you are ahead of people, it's not as simple as just slowing down, is it? You become a bit of a sitting duck as soon as you're out in front.
And as the boats are lining up, when we're dividing the work between all the umpires, there's 12 boats on the start line. We've got 4 umpires covering all those 12 boats, and you're looking at boats that are going to be early. You're looking at other boats that are, coming in maybe from the windward side that are coming in to hook those boats. So there's quite a lot of, there's a lot of stuff going on with the boats that are trying to edge themselves towards the line at a good rate, and then you get the guys that are coming from further back that then slingshot the way over the line. And we saw it a couple of times this weekend. You might be on the line very close, but if you're not going quick enough, then you're just going to get steamrolled as you go down that first reach. So it's a really difficult setup, difficult to get right every time.
Yeah, no, it certainly is difficult, and often it's quite a costly situation if the start doesn't go to plan, and you do end up being over it and getting the voice of Craig Mitchell in your ear and sent out to the back of the fleet. It can be quite hard, but for this one, for Australia, Slingsby did a good job of resetting, and we're going to look at how they work their way back through the fleet from there. Craig, thanks very much for your input there, mate.
Yeah, great to speak to you, and we'll see you again soon.
Last to first. Well, there you go. Don't get a lot better than that as comebacks.
There was a few moments of quite tactical brilliance, patience, skill, just really good tactical sailing, basically from a couple of the teams, and a few different examples. The one that really want to get into first was race 2. The Bonds Flying Ruse. They're over the start line, so we kind of join the Australian boat here in the pre-start, and they're doing that pre-start dance. You can hear a lot of the onboard comms, and they're sort of a bit early, but they're leading the pack back as they're coming in towards the start here. And when the line does turn white for the Australians, unfortunately, they are over. They're over early now. That's a get behind penalty. They've got to get all the way to the back of the pack. And really, it was some sort of 20 seconds further on down the leg. They've got to let the whole fleet pass. They're in 11th place, out of 11th. Not had a brilliant first race. So pretty early on in this event, the pressure goes quite squarely on the shoulders of Slingsby. And I think just following the race from this moment here, Canada passed them. Now it's a reset. We've got to go again. And I think as we come round Mark 1, we see that straight away, really. There's no dramatic movement. There's no kind of, I've got to force a quick tactical move. We see Switzerland, we see New Zealand and Great Britain. They're in a different place in the race. They're a bit further forward. They've manoeuvred. They've jibed early after Mark 1. But there's no desperation from Slingsby and Tash at this point. You can just hear them talking about mode, getting the boat going well, and then starting to think about how do I minimise the distance I sail around the course, and how do I continue to do that next right manoeuvre on the racetrack. So, yeah, no big roll of the dice early in the race from the Australians here. Get back into it, resettle, reset, and then let's start going. So we see them here, and they've come in towards the boundary. They're just following, really. There's no tactical masterclass here, but what there is, and for people at home to take a bit of attention to, is that they're patient. They don't throw everything out just because they've had that bit of bad luck early in the race. And we see Australia, by keeping things simple, they've minimised the manoeuvres. They've set themselves up for a left turn. Well, they're not the only ones to think of the left turn. By the look of this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boats already turned left. The other boats are all heading out right. But as we come round the mark, Slingsby's onto it with the wind shift. You've got to start the leg of a course on the lifted tack. Now, what do I mean by that? You've got to start the upwind leg, or the next leg of the course, on the tack that's taking you towards the next gate the quickest. So we hear Slingsby come round, big righty, set up. He's straight into it, and he's dynamic as he comes out of gate 2 here. You can see he will have clear wind where he's positioned himself here. What does clear wind mean? It means he can get the hammer down, use that renowned boat speed they have. Numbers at the top of the mast aren't necessarily the best indicator here. It's not the fastest boat on the course, but what the Australians did when we look at the data on that first day of racing was they chose to sail what's called quite a high mode. They were sailing angled well up the ladder lines, so they were making a good angle towards the gate, maybe not going quite as fast as some of the other teams, but overall that comparison of am I going to sail less distance or more speed, well, they were making those maths work out that they were progressing towards the next gate the quickest. So he gave himself space early on the leg to keep the hammer down. When you're back in the pack, it's normally really hard to be going at full speed. Slingsby was sharp out of gate 2. He's into it. Now, caught in the pack here, gate number 3, top of the course. Easy again to get frustrated and try and force things. Germany, manoeuvre directly in front. If you're in the pack, well, unfortunately, it's just how it is. You just won't always have control of your decisions. Some people will get in your way when you don't want them. We hear Tom, he's renowned for having a bit of a temper on him. I don't know if it's a temper or it's just, a passion and aggression. Let's go with that. Sounds a lot better. He's very passionate, very aggressive. And the Germans effectively form a bit of a roadblock in front of him, but he knows that's going to happen. Okay, I've worked my way back up. I'm showing as 7th now. I was 11th. Well, that's 4 points gained already. We're doing good. We're in it. He stays patient here, patient as he can, but again, he avoids the silly errors. Silly error would have been to get into a foul with Germany, to try and force an issue. We hear him as he moves on down the leg. Watch out. Let's keep our eyes clear on the German team. And again, he's just sailing the boat fast. He's got space. Finding space in amongst the chaos is always the key in these boats, doing good manoeuvres. But I'm right back in. Look, I can see the leaders. I'm struggling maybe to catch the leaders, but can I catch up to 3rd, 4th, 5th in this race? Simple things well, simple things well. So now as we approach the final mark in towards the finish here, he's got himself right back into the race. He's now all the way up to 5th place. And we can see New Zealand turn on the mark. France are aiming at the finish. GBR have already finished. They're gone. New Zealand, 27.4 kilometres an hour. Spain are manoeuvring, 44.6. Now, for me here, Botin's made a mistake. He's gone wider than he needs to go in his line up towards that final turning mark. He's opened a bit of a door. Despite being in 5th, Slingsby sees an opening. Now, we're going to have to, hopefully find out some of the details, but it's an aggressive move here from Slingsby because to me, it looks like he's going to struggle to get into that zone, or for when the crucial moment is when Spain, hit the zone. So if when Spain hit the zone, Australia are overlapped, so their boat is alongside, slightly overlapped with the Spanish boat, then he's entitled to go in there. If he's just a fraction behind and there's daylight between the two boats, he's not allowed in there and he'll be the one getting the penalty. So this is pure instinct here from Slingsby, but it's also that passion. Okay, yeah, I was 11th. I've got back to 5th. That's great, but there's no one else in the screen. So that means even if I get a boat-on-boat penalty where I have to end up finishing behind Spain, maybe it's worth the risk. I'm going to punch this here because New Zealand are still slow. Spain have opened the door for me. I'm going to go for it. And this is just aggression and instinct from Slingsby here. This is that never give up attitude. This is that passion to get the points. And he does. He sends it in. I've no doubt Spain asked the question. Was it a penalty? Wasn't it a penalty? Well, it wasn't a penalty. New Zealand made a mistake. Slingsby made no mistakes and he was through to 3rd. So where was the tactical masterclass in that for the Australians? The tactical masterclass was just doing the right thing, being relentlessly good. We know we're fast. We know we've got manoeuvres and we know we can be accurate around the course. And we're going to let the other boats on the racetrack make the mistakes. So he was patient. He was accurate. He was all over the detail. And then at that last moment when there was the chance to be aggressive and show us that Slingsby fight, well, he took it. He dived inside Spain. He then shot through New Zealand. Those two boats were in the grand final last year. Slingsby will have loved that.
What a weekend.
The Emirates winning moment goes to Team France.
Well, another really great moment for me was on that Sunday, shifty, gusty breeze, and France really needing the points all the way back in the fleet. And in the last 600 metres from the finish line, they went from 9th to 4th. They were pretty punchy, pretty brave, but we should have a little look into that because I think, again, a really good example of that never give up fight and just scrapping for every point you can get. So yeah, we're going to join the footage. We can see right-hand side of screen there. We've got France all the way back in 9th. Now, for the rest of the race, the most wind had been at the bottom of the screen, where Emirates GBR is. That had traditionally been where the most wind is. So a lot of the fleet are gravitating that way. But we come on board France here. We hear them here. Trope left. It's most left. The wind's really rotated to the left here. So they're thinking, well, we're on a good wind shift. We're taking an angle that's quite close towards the next mark. We can see top left-hand corner of screen, the water is a little darker up there. So they know they're sailing towards good wind. They can see that. If you can see it, say it. If it looks like wind, it probably is wind. And they also know, well, a 9th is no good to us. And we're really late in the race. Worst we can come is 10th. Well, the Italian boat, we can see still a leg behind. So they're nothing to worry about. Time to roll the dice. They keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But they're doing it. Yes, there's a little bit of luck. The opportunity presents itself. But they see it and they take it and they stay fast. When they come back across the rest of the fleet, who have sailed themselves out of wind, the French were all the way up to 4th. And those points were the points that got them into the final. So again, on board that French boat, they did the basics well. They were sailing on the lifted tack, in breeze, keeping the speed in. And they got space on the racecourse. As soon as you're back in the pack, It's hard to get space, hard to keep the boat fast. French did that. Contan and crew were not willing to give up. They just fought so hard all the way to the finish there. So valuable points. A little bit of tactical genius in the fact that they spotted that breeze out there and they were brave enough to go for it. Perhaps luck, but if it comes along, you've got to be able to take it, and they certainly did. Oh, it's just been brilliant to look back at a really action-packed weekend in Sassnitz. Fantastic racing, and I hope that's the takeaway we can have, the real tactical, tight racing battles that went out on there, along with those record-breaking speeds. Big thank you to Chief Umpire Craig Mitchell for coming in and joining us. Until next time, this has been SailGP's Inside Look.